Okay, we've got a great amount of people already here. So just want to go ahead and welcome everyone. And thank you for joining us for today's fireside chat, the future of AI powered GRC and cyber risk management. We're grateful that you're here, and we look forward to making our time together jam-packed with valuable information that is actionable for you. Just a reminder, this is a recorded webinar. The recording will be shared with all participants via the email you registered with. There's a Q&A function at the bottom of your Zoom participant screen that you could use for questions and comments that you may have during our time together. Without further ado, I want to introduce your host for today's webinar, Ed Gaudet, founder and CEO of Censinet, and also Ben Schreiner, head of AI and modern data strategy business development at AWS. Gentlemen, the floor is yours, and thanks everyone for joining us.
Thanks, Saul. And thanks everyone for joining us today. As Saul said, we have a lot to cover. And I'm really excited to have Ben here. Ben and I've been following Ben for a number of years. And Ben, I think you might have one of the longest titles.
Thank goodness we got rid of business cards, because I don't think it would fit.
That I've seen in a long time. So let's start off with, what are you doing these days? What is the head of AI and modern data strategy? That seems like, damn, that's really important. Obviously, we're going to unpack a lot of what that means, but let's start off with just, tell us a little more about your role and the things you're focused on.
Yeah, happy to, Ed. So at AWS, me and my team are actively out engaging customers, usually large groups of customers, such as this webinar setting, really trying to educate those who are in various roles on how they might be able to take advantage of AI, the importance of having a modern data strategy, and then, of course, what's near and dear to your heart, security, wrapping around all of those things in one big happy package. But it's an exciting time in technology. There's definitely a buzz and a hype, if you will. So the conversations are many. There are lots of questions and answers are changing. It seems like on a daily basis as new things materialize. So it's definitely an exciting time, and our customers are eager to figure out how to take advantage of this new capability. And we're here, and our partners are here to help them do just that.
As a health system leader approaches you, or maybe a third party vendor that's developing AI enabled systems for healthcare, what do they ask you? What are they looking for initially, and sort of what's the beginning of that journey that you help them with?
It's all over the place, Ed. You've got some folks who've been at this for quite some time and have been doing predictive analytics. You've got others who are really just getting started and are very concerned about compliance and data security and data protection, and how these tools might be used, in nefarious ways, or maybe to potentially harm the organization, and pretty much everything in between there, Ed, is a possible starting point. And so what we like to do is to really start with the individual organization and understand kind of where are they in their thinking, how have they approached their data and data protection. Again, another hot topic, and especially in healthcare, it's all over the map on where folks are with not just data protection and encryption and security, but also just data governance, and do I understand what I have and where it is and who's accessing it, and then layer on a regulatory environment that we all can anticipate will change at some point in time. And maybe it's not right now, maybe it's not the next 12 months, but the regulations will come, when it comes to AI. And I think a lot of folks, especially those doing business, overseas or outside of this country, are sensitive to how do I make sure the data that is being used and leveraged by AI stays where I need it to stay, and that it stays protected, and I'm not unknowingly exposing myself to some level of risk. And so we like to work backwards from kind of where are you, And then the other thing we like to talk quite a bit about is how do you want to apply AI? Because there's lots of different ways you could apply it, whether it's, your security team using it to, better prioritize their time to, individuals in the health system, either being able to do, better diagnosis or, reading x-rays or whatever it happens to be. There's so many possibilities right now that I find that we spend a little bit of time going, what's your list that you've come up with? And then how do we make sure we're prioritizing that list on things that are achievable right now with today's technology, where you have the data needed to be successful, you have access, or it's in a good shape so that you can actually leverage it and do something meaningful. Because you can get some benefit from AI out of the box, but it's incremental. The real step function change that we find customers experience is when they do have a good handle on their data and what's there, and can really either fine tune or develop knowledge bases so that the results from whatever application they create truly are bar raising and make a difference for the end user.
Now, are there any patterns of usage? You see any use cases rising to the top, given that list of options and opportunities?
There's definitely an efficiency play. So summarizing, I do a fair amount of speaking to compliance officers who spend a fair amount of time, digging through documents and legislation and trying to make sure that standard operating procedures being followed. That's one thing, and then that they're staying compliant. So I do think there's a real opportunity for some automation and summary and reporting, as well as prioritizing, where to focus your time and energy. The other one we see quite a bit is customer service and customer experience. It's our belief that you will find AI become a feature inside of most software, right? And inevitably, the software providers are using it to make their software better and more valuable and help their end customers. But also, we think most jobs will be augmented in some way, shape, or form, whether it's staffing and scheduling and optimizing schedules, whether it's inventory management inside of a healthcare facility. There are many, many areas where AI can be advantageous at looking at massive amounts of information. Last week, I was actually speaking in an event where it was the drug labs, where it's all discovery, and just think about compressing the time to come up with a new drug, going from 10 years to 2, is pretty incredible. But if you could have the lab be able to prioritize the experiments that have a higher probability of being successful, and then automating the process in the lab to create those experiments, document those experiments, and so forth, you really can accelerate the discovery. And I'm super optimistic because some of the folks speaking at this event were like, our mission is to stop cancer, in its tracks, right? Which I think all of us, around the world could get behind.
Yes. Amen.
If you can use AI to accelerate the lab and the technician's time to really just be on things that have the best chance of success, they're not wasting time on all these other things, and running those scenarios and running those hypotheses, can really kind of, again, compress time. And that's where we're seeing AI have the biggest value. Is anything that takes a lot of time or has a lot of data that human beings can't possibly sift through. That's a great place to see if AI can help. And so I'm super excited, actually, in all aspects of healthcare, whether it's processing claims, which all of us have had experience with, and I think we can all agree could get better, to just diagnosis and giving the doctors, the best possible information at the time that a customer is with them, and having it be all about the patient, to me is super exciting when it comes to healthcare and technology.
Yeah, and I love some of the examples you use, this ability to harmonize different data sets, like especially like with the compliance issue of dealing with the regulatory considerations, but now you've got state considerations, you have industry considerations, and being able to map to those quickly and understand, the overlaps, if you will, the Venn that exists, and those things you've got to cover versus those things that you may be able to sort of put aside. And similarly, taking that and applying it in the healthcare context, I think is really interesting. It's certainly, when you talk about things like cancer, you do have to have that conversation about, is the risk worth the reward? Certainly, I would say yes. In that situation, we could solve cancer. Certainly, let's take as many risks as possible. However, there is the data risk. And what is Amazon doing to enable and help with protecting of patient data in that context? What are some of the tool sets that these health systems that are maybe developing native applications or consuming applications from third parties, what things should they look for?
Sure. So Ed, we take we call it the shared responsibility model. So security is job zero here at AWS and broader Amazon. It's part of how we earn trust with our customers, such as yourself, and then ultimately with your customers. The cloud needs to be reliable. It needs to be secure. Otherwise, people wouldn't build on top of it or migrate their mission critical workload. So it is priority zero for us. We take a layered approach. So whether it's down to you can't tour one of our data centers, right? Like we don't advertise where they are. So from physical security to our Nitro system on the hardware itself, allowing for complete isolation and protection at the hardware level, to various tools we have to make the job of securing an identity and access management easier, to threat detection and remediation. All of those things are considerations. As you can imagine, we have a fairly robust team that protects the cloud and what you put on top of it. But then it's up to you, the customer, to protect what you put inside of AWS. So your team secures, your software and the data that your software leverages or consumes. And that's why we call it a shared responsibility model. But we try very hard to provide best practices, guides. We have something called a well-architected review where we can get with your team and look at what you've done and compare it against our best practices to see, how well you stack up and make recommendations for enhancement. And then there are other tools that, you mentioned patient data and, personally identifiable information. We've got a service called Macy that'll look at your information, find that personal identifiable information, and then can actually make sure or mask it so that if you're using it to train a model, that you're not pulling in that protected information into an AI process. So there are many tools for folks such as yourself or customers to leverage to, again, try to make this easier to identify what needs to be protected and then put the appropriate guardrails and protections around it.
Yeah, is there more? Can we go maybe to the next level on Macy? I'd love to learn maybe a little more about what that entails.
Yeah, and it's a tool that many people are using. If you think about S3 or object storage, I like to joke that we've become a society of hoarders where we don't delete anything anymore. We just keep storing, right?
This is like my bookshelves. My bookshelf books are having babies in my house. So
there you go. But it's true. I think we at reInvent said we have something like 400 trillion objects now in S3, which is just a staggering amount of data being collected. And I'm empathetic to those in the technology space, because all of that then needs to be protected, and you need to know what's there and make sure you have the appropriate, again, identity and access rights. And so having a service that can scan that information and identify, areas that have embedded personally identifiable information to make sure, again, you're not accidentally having that leak out of the organization in some way, shape, or form, again, is what the service does. So it's again, it's another way for us to help folks automate some of this really important work. The other thing we're doing is we announced at reInvent the ability to extract metadata out of S3 to kind of look at what's there and pull up so that it gives you a sense, when everybody's storing everything, kind of what is it, so that you know where to double click and you're not wasting a bunch of time on areas that shouldn't have something that is worth protecting or that would be of risk. So it again allows for the practitioners to better optimize their time by providing better fidelity as to what's in those various storage or buckets.
Yeah, and we found it hugely valuable, all the services that you've provided us as we've been scaling our infrastructure, making it obviously more secure for our customers. And that's why I wanted you to double click on that, because I think it's a real valuable.
Yeah, let me flip the question on you, Ed. What are you guys doing and leveraging, and how are you seeing it help you protect the data that you're responsible for?
Yeah, well, I think I've been working with Amazon AWS for a long time now. I've done 11 companies. Most recently.
You're quite the serial entrepreneur. We really
I
do
don't know about that. There's a fine line between serial entrepreneur and, I my early experience with Amazon, I'll share this anecdote because I think it's really a testament and reflection of the culture that Amazon has built. When I was at my previous company, we had an outage, and we had a pretty severe outage. We were selling communication tools, basically to nurses and doctors that were using them to collaborate on care. And we had an outage, and I think it was during like Mother's Day or something, but it was like a weekend. And of course, we weren't getting the level of telemetry that we would have expected given the severity of the outage, and as the hours ticked by, it got worse and worse and a little more desperate. And so I had heard that, and I've been an Amazon investor early on, 2005 or so, when I saw the first introduction of AWS come out. It put some money to work. But I'd heard anecdotally that Jeff Bezos would respond to emails if they ever came in. So of course we were at Wit's End, and I crafted this email to Bezos, and I said basically, hey, we're a small company, we're servicing health systems, we're in dire need of help or some answers. And I got an answer within 20 minutes from him. And he set me up with the individuals that actually, and these were a couple of services that had gone down, but those architects that had actually created those services, he put my team on the call with them, and we worked through the issues. And I just never forgot that. And I thought to myself, they've got my business for life. Like, they've earned that for life.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. So when we began to build out the Censinet platform, first and foremost, it's got to be secure by default design. We've got to architect it with security in mind, because if we break the trust of customers, game over, right? So
you're done.
Yeah, you're done. So started off early on with AWS, and have been building towards, obviously expanding out the platform. We made some announcements recently at Vive, where we not only announced our AI strategy, but we also announced tools that are available today in the marketplace. And the key thing that we did that I think is unique is that it wasn't an all or nothing for us, because ultimately customers have to decide their level and time frame for adoption. And if you provide them with an all or nothing, they don't really have the option to adopt at their pace. So we took a different approach, which says we make them available. So first of all, we built out a foundational architecture and infrastructure on the AWS stack with the AWS tools, and the development team working with customers would develop features and capabilities and then make those available on demand. So a customer could go in, they would understand what was available through some type of communication mechanism, and then they could turn it on or wait until they felt like they had enough confidence in the release or the capability that we're bringing to market. So the first thing we did was let's not just turn it on for everyone like a startup would do if that's all they do is AI. Let's give our customers that demand security and protection of patient safety, of patient data, the ability to make that decision when they're ready. And so because we manage an exchange where we have providers, health systems on one side, and we have their third-party ecosystem of vendors, we felt it was appropriate to do that for both sides of the network. So
Sure.
vendors as well can turn on AI capabilities as they need to, based on their ability to be more efficient, to save time. And we found, as you said, that first use case of really compressing the time exponentially is so valuable, but it has to be, at the right time and at the right level of adoption and consumption for the customer. The customer has to make that decision.
I love that you're doing it that way, Ed. Really letting the customer opt in to when they're ready. That's a
Yeah.
great customer obsessed approach to allowing them to adopt at their own pace. What was the response at Vive to the announcements, and how was that conference for you?
Yeah, it's been good. I mean, Vive is one of our key events. We typically do hymns. We didn't do it this year. We decided to put some investments in a couple of other programs outside of hymns. But Vive is, they pioneered, I think, and have done really well of improving over time this notion of hosted buyer meetings. I don't know what they call them today. They've given it some other name, but really it's an ability for the buyer, that the CIO, the CISO on the health system side, to opt in to a meeting because there's a need, either near term or longer term. And I just find those other organizations have those or have had those, and they just don't work because there's some pay for play. The person coming there is really being paid to come there, and there's some there's some remuneration with the provider, but it's what I found is that every provider that we met with wants to be there, and the conversations are much more, much more productive. So Vive's been great for us. The response to what we're doing has been awesome. We have a bunch of customers that are currently opting in to the AI capabilities on both sides of the network, on the provider side as well as the vendor side. And we've got this development flywheel where we're already on the next set of capabilities that we're going to be introducing over the next couple of quarters to the industry.
Awesome. Hey, Ed, can you just tell me and the audience just what are those AI capabilities that are being opted in right now? What does it do for your
Yeah.
respective customers? You mentioned the two sides, but
Yeah.
I wasn't real clear on what the AI capabilities were doing for each one.
Yeah, so what we focus on is really driving the future of healthcare risk management by pioneering new AI-driven compliance and security capabilities and frameworks to help these health systems, life science organizations, payers, as well as their vendor community, achieve scalable trust, which is really important. Obviously, making sure that they've got a level of regulatory excellence that enables them to enable new business functions and capabilities, but also at the end of the day, have this level of operational resilience that if something does happen that's bad, they can recover quickly. And so from an AI perspective, we're like you said, customer obsessed. We're obsessed with, and again, I took a page out of the Bezos playbook from compute and storage, right? He drove that down to zero. And we're driving the cost and the process of doing risk assessments down to zero
Good.
because we believe that that's rote manual task that nobody likes to do. Nobody's ever said, I want to be I want to do risk analysis. I want to be able to spend time, asking and begging vendors to fill out their questionnaires and all that, right? Nobody wants to do that.
Right.
But once you get that data in, there is such richness in that data that you've collected that really helps build those, not just that system of record, but that system of intelligence over time that helps the organization make better risk-based decisions. And so we're obsessed with applying AI to drive down the time it takes on both sides of the network. So on the vendor side, basically there's two things that we do. We enable them to get data in faster into the platform so that the other side of the exchange can leverage it.
Right.
But we also give them the ability to deal with opportunities that are outside of the network. So if they have requests from non-healthcare organizations, they can use the same tool set. We have, we've got this, they have this basically capability that we think of it like a cybersecurity data room or a trust center where
Okay.
they can manage all of their data, and they can then respond to requests for security risk assessment questionnaires or any types of data within the context of that data room over time. And we apply AI to that to make it faster for them, give them insights into how to answer the questionnaires, what data sets they need, et cetera. And then on the provider side, we are enabling them to summarize the data that they collect for their reporting purposes, to identify threats that they may not be able to see that aren't clear within the data report that, is one dimensional. If you have AI, you've got a multi-dimensional approach now to reporting and gathering intelligence. And then lastly, to leverage similar tools to complete assessments that the provider may have to deal with, from insurers, from bond rating agencies, from
Sure.
payers, right? Cyber insurers, et cetera. And then any tasks that require a manual approach to completing, we again leverage the AI capability. So think of it in two ways, you know, automation efficiency, making things faster to complete, finish, and then the analysis piece of that. Once you've got the data, what intelligence, what can you learn from the
What can you
data
do with it?
and
Yeah, I love
apply,
that. Yeah.
yeah, to your business to make it, to maybe identify risks that are slowing you down, maybe to identify opportunities that you can apply, more caution to, more analysis to, they hadn't thought about, but in mostly create continually create new context of risks that the business understands, because risk is a business decision. It's not a technology decision,
Couldn't
right?
agree
And
more.
and so enabling the teams, the technology teams, with this Rosetta Stone, if you will, to communicate risks at the business level in a way that the business understands, and they can make quick decisions and accurate decisions.
I love that. Again, connecting I mean, these healthcare providers and companies are there to help patients, right?
That's right.
Right? Like that's the business is they're in is to providing care.
Yeah, yeah.
Technology is the big enabler, and you want those departments to be, saying yes to technology that advances the
Mm.
cause or the solutions, and not having to say no or pump the brakes because we have to do all these things before we can adopt something new. So love that you're accelerating that process for both sides, not just one, because I do think that efficiency will help.
Yeah, and if as we look ahead, really great questions. As we look ahead, how is Amazon thinking about agentic capabilities and agentic tools to help customers really bring that whole concept in and leverage it?
We could not be more excited for the future, to say the very least. What we're trying to do when it comes to agentic, and if you look at all the things we're doing, whether it's the chip layer and making inference more affordable and making more chips available so that more folks can do this, or the management layer, our bedrock, where you can get to model choice. We're big believers in choice. I know you're an Amazon.com customer, and hopefully many of you are. We appreciate very much your business, but that model was based on having the most choice, the most vendors, the most to drive down ideally the price so that you get more customers, and it becomes a bit of a flywheel, if you were. And Andy knows that model, and in AWS we're trying to do the same thing with model choice. We don't believe for a second that one model can solve all the problems. I don't know, Ed, the details of your problem or the model that's best suited, right? But what we want to do is give you as many models as possible and the ability to compare them so that you can make the best possible choice. I can profess this, that the models will change. I think we've all experienced that. And I think we need to architect our solutions to anticipate and be able to swap models out so that you can take advantage of the next greatest model that comes out wherever it comes from. And that's really what we want to be able to facilitate.
Mhm.
And if you take that complexity and then you layer agents on top of it's amazing what we're going to be able to do. The complexity of problems and automations that are going to be possible, the reasoning that can be done is going to be game changing for entire industries. And the healthcare industry is certainly one. Security is another, where chaining together analysis and then taking action is going to be very powerful. But, and I say this with the utmost caution, right, is there still are things that need to be taken care of, right?
Mhm.
So technicians such as yourself and those listening, right, you're going to need a way to orchestrate these agents, right? How do they interact with each other? What role do they have? What access to data do they have? And how do you ensure that, if I'm a junior person, I don't get access to, maybe the payroll of the executive team, right? Like I shouldn't, even if the agent has that access, it needs to know contextually who's asking the question and what data should they have access to. And so this is where, the human and AI, collaboration becomes very important, and identifying, who's asking, what they should be having access to, so that you have that level of security and compliance integrity throughout the entire system. The other thing we're eager and advocating for is transparency, right? So making sure that the systems show their work, right? Like, where did you get this information, and validating that it's good, reliable information and not a hallucination. Like, that would be terrible in the healthcare space, to be making hallucinations left and right when it comes to care. So, we've come out with, and we've been using for quite some time, the ability to use, math proofs to automate, double check basically the work of the systems themselves. So automated reasoning is something that we're now making available to our customers, something we've been using in AWS for quite some time. So it's a proven technology to improve the trustworthiness of the system, which also improves the adoption, because if these systems get rolled out, or these agents get rolled out, and they're not reliable, or they don't give good answers, then the adoption falls off, and then you didn't solve anything at the end of the day, which none of us have time to, or money to roll things out that don't solve the problem that they were intended to. So we're eager to help folks with the orchestration layer, with the transparency, and really trying to make sure that, what folks build are built with tools that provide that layered security, and anticipate kind of the challenges that are ahead. Because these agents, while very powerful, I think what you're going to find is they're incredibly easy to make, and it, with that, becomes this possibility that you have lots of different agents doing all kinds of different things. And as stewards of security, we're going to need to understand who made this agent, what is it doing, and what role and access does it have to the data. And again, that becomes another layer of governance and compliance that we can all anticipate. And we're trying to stay kind of ahead of that curve, creating capabilities and tools so that folks such as yourself and your customers have the visibility they need, the governance that they need, and that, again, transparency becomes a core tenet in the applications that get built.
Yeah, I think you're spot on, and governance is becoming a first class or a core function at the seat of the table, in a way that it's as important as those business enabling functions today.
You have to do both, right? You got to do both.
You got to do both.
This is an and. It's not an or. It's an and.
Well, more so now than ever, because of of how things were evolving. And I think in the past it was always sort of, oh yeah, let's look at GRC and
Yeah,
let's look at their
we'll do that
numbers.
later.
Yeah, we'll do that later. Like we got to generate revenue and we need new businesses and we need new markets and right. And we'll talk to the risk people later. I think that's really exciting for the industry, a little scary, but also, it's and you mentioned data. I wanted to explore, this topic with you. I think we're starting to see more emphasis on domain-specific language
Sure.
models versus large language models.
Yeah.
How does Amazon, how do you think about that when you spend time
Couldn't
marketing?
agree more, right?
Yeah.
Like again, there's a place for large language models and their capabilities, but when you get to I'm trying to solve a very specific problem in my workflow or in my
Yeah.
organization, and we all know this about doctors in the healthcare industry. It's a different language. Let's all just admit that. And having models that understand that language and then can interpret and or take action accordingly is going to directly correlate to the effectiveness of that solution. So, we've got various tools specific to the healthcare industry, whether it's the Health Lake or Health Scribe, and we've been heavily involved in the development and with our customers because the language of healthcare and medicine is so unique. You need a model that understands that and understands the nuance associated. I think you'll see it in other industries too, because at the end of the day, it comes down to model effectiveness, right? And the
Yeah.
model, no different than I can't speak Spanish, and if you spoke to me in Spanish, I wouldn't understand. The language of the domain, is specific to the domain, and so the more a model and a solution understands that domain specific knowledge, the better. The other thing I would say is the size of the model, right? So the
Mhm.
size of the model certainly does matter because it directly impacts the cost to operate said model, right? And so narrowing or distilling a model down to domain specific knowledge and data can allow you to actually run in a more cost-effective, efficient manner. So we're excited about that. And then the other thing I'll say that we announced at reInvent that I'm super excited about, and I'm sure you've called into tech support or called into a bank at some point in time, and they ask you a few questions about what are you calling about, right? And if it's your
Yeah.
checking account or your investment account or your mortgage or your car, like they'll route you to a different agent that
Right.
has
Right.
that expertise or that certification. And we came up with prompt routing, which is going to allow an individual to develop a single UI, and you don't know what question is going to get asked. But once you have the question, you could then route to the model that's either sized or tuned to answer
Mm.
that particular question, allowing for practitioners to kind of tailor the return on investment. I don't have to send every ask to the great big model because it's all knowing. I can send asks to smaller models and get a better price performance if I can, again, route the question to the right model. So I'm excited about model distillation as well as prompt routing as two ways for practitioners to really try and match the cost and performance to the problem of what they're trying to solve. And again, I think it's going to allow more people to do more with AI because the cost benefit will be there for even smaller tasks.
Yeah, no, great point. I put a link to an article that Dr. John Halamka from the Mayo Clinic wrote about evaluating and comparing LLMs in healthcare. So,
Perfect.
I just draw attention to that. And there's also security implications as well. When leveraging that type of capability, it should be better, right? I mean, if you're creating sort of a microservice, if you will, for data access across large language models
Yeah.
to solve a particular very specific problem. Talk about the security implications, talk about, the persistence of that data within the context of that transaction.
Yeah, if you look at the whole value chain from the application itself to the how it's managed to the data that supports it, Yeah, there's security implications throughout, right?
Yeah.
And as I said, there's a funny analogy I use or test is lots of folks raced out to get a bot out so that they could say they were doing AI. And I have a test there where if you have inside your healthcare organization, if you have some AI, I'd encourage you to run this test, is ask it for grandma's chocolate chip cookie recipe or the best chocolate chip cookie recipe, because it shouldn't give you one, right? Like it really shouldn't, right? Because a cookie recipe is irrelevant to, I think, most healthcare oriented, customers that might be out there. It just shouldn't
be
give
something
you an
in those cookies, though, Ben. That is.
I mean, now I'm hungry, so I apologize for any if I just made everybody go get a snack.
That's right. Yeah.
But the reality is, if you don't, when you create your app, put a frame around it on what it will, and very importantly, will not do, like give a recipe for cookies. You run the risk of it doing a whole bunch of things you didn't expect it to do, right? That aren't relevant to your particular organization or the problems you're trying to solve. You also are going to run up your costs, right? So all these inferences, even grandma's cookie recipe, costs money to get an answer to, right? And so you want to make sure that your solutions are dialed into, this is the domain. These are the kinds of questions we will answer, and we're not going to answer questions that are outside this domain to keep, again, the cost down, but also to control the bot from doing things that you don't anticipate it doing. And if you're in the security world for more than 6 months, you've seen users do things that you don't expect them to do. We all have over the years. And so you need to make sure that your security model all the way through, is protecting users maybe from themselves or putting guardrails in place to stop them from doing things with your systems that you don't want them to do.
Yeah, and having the transparency of that information as you're architecting your solution or acquiring a solution. So, as you look at things like model cards, and continuous monitoring of model cards, how real is that? If you think about a model card getting completed, as a one and done ingredient label, if you will, of the model itself and the system. And then over time, all of the changes that are happening weekly, every day, every hour, every minute, right? How do you maintain that in a way that makes it useful?
Yeah, and it's an important starting point, and I think you make it like this is a journey, and these models are evolving. Part of it is helping with that model card or the recipe of how did we develop this and what is the intended use, helps a customer choose the right model, right? Like, so let's just start with like, which model am I going to leverage? And the model cards can help in the choice of how I go about do it. I do think any practitioner out there should be comparing models and the outputs to make sure that the model is going to meet your needs. And that should be an ongoing process too, to compare. Again, these models change quite frequently. And they're only getting better as time goes on. So having a different frame of mind as we think about applying these things in a more iterative, agile way. We need to build that into our process, Ed, to constantly be evaluating to make sure that there isn't a drift. One of the things, at least in how you deploy inside of Bedrock, is you get your own version of the model and it's yours. And so even if, for example, Anthropic comes out with the new 3.7, that doesn't mean you have it yet, right? And so you can operate your version for as long as you want, and there won't be that drift, if you will. Or you could decide, actually, no, I really want the price performance and the new capabilities, and then swap out your older, version of the model for a new one. And I think that's really kind of the foreseeable future for most of us is building that kind of, how do I evaluate and when do I make the decision to swap out a model so that I can get either the new capabilities or the price performance that's being ascertained or achieved with these new models? Because the one thing we have seen is is the price being driven down. And again, part of our goal is to allow all of our customers to have access to, again, the latest and greatest capabilities, so that we're democratizing that access. So even really small companies can take advantage of these new capabilities.
Just like compute storage, drive it to zero.
As close as we can, right? We certainly do want to make choice is important, but making the right choice for your company. So the ability to compare in an automated way is important. We believe to making that choice. There's a lot of folks that rushed out to the earliest models and made a choice, but haven't compared it to anything else. And I'd encourage anybody out there, if you've only been using one model, there's many out there, and make an informed choice, as you move forward, to make sure that you're getting the price performance that the best price performance that you possibly can.
Yeah, that's a great point, and I just want to raise the point of innovation that Anthropic is bringing.
Excellent. Yeah, absolutely.
The model context protocol, and do you feel like that'll become a standard? You talked about programmatically really managing and orchestrating these models. Imagine an API, obviously, that can traverse models is going to be needed to realize the future of agentic computing.
Sure.
And so, any thoughts on where we're at there of the MCP becoming a standard, or anything you can share with?
I think it's early, right? I mean, there's nothing but goodness coming out of this direction. Again, I think it's an anticipation of a need and trying to establish a pattern that addresses a foreseeable need, right? I don't think most are truly at that stage of having that problem just yet, but I think we can all intellectually and logically see it coming. And I think we all want that same flexibility that APIs provided all of us for, function calling. Like it's just an extension of the same logical model. And if you think about our prompt routing, it's a very similar, kind of approach, which is, I don't know what the question is, but once I have it, I want to be able to route it to a model. And if you have this framework that allows you to easily access those things, you can see the two things fitting, very nicely together. So I anticipate it'll go through several iterations. You'll have some proof points, and it will evolve like everything right now, quite rapidly, as the problem it's meant to solve evolves, right? And as folks start to get into more and more complexity and have more and more agents wanting to access more and more different models, that's when you're going to see the need for this type of standardization or framework really starting to be adopted. So, again, I'm excited about it. I think we're really early days, but it's good thinking about a problem that's in the, I'd argue, not too distant future for many organizations.
Yeah, what I love about collaborating and partnering with Amazon and AWS is I know that just like with AWS, you're going to use it first.
Absolutely.
You're going to apply it to your own business first. And so I suspect like it'll become a standard in the way you develop, and you're actually creating these agentic solutions to help your business, to help the Amazon business. Obviously, I'm not asking for any inside baseball, but what I've seen in the past is sort of that pattern, which I love, because again, I know with confidence that if you announce it and you release it, you've already probably consumed it.
Yeah, I mean, and a perfect example of that is the automated reasoning that we announced at reInvent. We've been using it for quite some time to, again, up the trust value in, what we do in AWS and in the console. There's lots of validations that we do on your behalf that's nobody's ever seen, right? It's all been behind the scenes and this algorithm that we've developed, over quite some time that now, again, we're making available to customers because like you said, we've proven that it works for us, or our personalized capability, which was proven by Amazon.com and the recommendation engine that it has, we make available as a service. And again, many of the security services that are services that you use on a regular basis were proven inside our own organization, or brought to us as a customer saying, this is hard for me to do. Amazon, can you make it easier? You seem to have figured it out for yourself, just like you said. And I would really appreciate it if you would make available a service that would allow me to do it easier. The other thing I want to say, Ed, and I think it's important for the audience to understand, we really promote, and you mentioned culture earlier in our talk, we have a culture of security as well, right? And I think with AI, gone are the days of the Nigerian prince looking for you to wire money with a bunch of misspelled words.
Right.
We got to understand that the adversaries are going to have access to some pretty powerful tools, and phishing expeditions are going to be, really difficult to weed out, if you will. And so the job of staying secure and compliant, I don't think is getting any easier because of the adversaries and the changing regulation. And so we want folks like yourself and your customers to leverage tools to free up time so that they can be as efficient and effective as possible. And part of that is just having a culture of security where it's everyone's job, right? Like, it's not just the CISO's job. It's not just the security team's job. It's actually everyone's responsibility, from physical security to data security to security of the applications and how the data is leveraged. And that's a mental shift for a lot of folks. I will say that because of the regulatory nature of either banks or healthcare, they've had, probably more of that exposure. But I really do think these tools make it an absolute must, right? Like it's not optional anymore, that security be a part of everyone's job, and that the expectation is that everybody takes, that seriously and their role that they play, whether it's using an AI bot for what it was designed to do or not, or protecting, critical patient information. Everyone in the org has a role to play. And again, the practitioners that are out there is putting the guardrails in place to, make sure you keep folks where you want them, and the data where you want them is a really important, piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, get on board or risk annihilation. I think is the message of the day. Obviously responsibly, in a secure manner. It's interesting. I'm looking at some of the questions that came in. I don't know if we'll have time, but one was, "Oi, our AI just gave me a chocolate chip cookie recipe." So,
I'm sorry. Whoever's out there, I'm so sorry. But yes,
that's great.
it's such an easy test. But man, I can't tell you. I mentioned last week, somebody did it in the audience and then walked up to me and said, "Our brand new bot just gave me a chocolate chip cookie recipe." And I'm like, we're all learning, right? And we just need to learn that, we probably could put some controls in place to have that solution be a little more effective.
I'm going to ask this question. It's fairly benign. So, what level of knowledge, AI knowledge, would you recommend to? And this person asked about an IT risk analyst, but really any IT position, whether or IT risk analyst or other, to ensure they're better understanding and meeting standards utilized in today's technology stack.
Say that again. Sorry.
What level of AI knowledge?
Oh, AI knowledge. Yeah. You know what? Here's the beauty of all this. I think we all, regardless of role, need to start learning as much as we can. This stuff is going to change. I think every job will be augmented in some way, shape, or form by AI. Whether you're actually talking to a bot or not, or whether it's helping with the scheduling of nurses in a hospital, like there are lots of ways for AI to permeate the healthcare, giant system. And so I think everyone, it behooves you to learn as much as you can, just as an individual, but also then to have a better working knowledge of kind of what's possible, because it's well beyond just helping me write a better email, right? Like certainly can, like, don't get me wrong, but I really want to encourage anyone. There's tons of free classes. We've got bunches of classes that you can take. But I would encourage folks to just start using it, figuring out how your company's using it, because people are, whether you gave it to them or not, they are using it,
Yeah,
which can cause concern all by itself there, right? Like, so
gave it to them or authorized.
yeah. Well, and sometimes neither, right? Like sometimes it's just on their phone and
That's
they're
right.
doing stuff, and you're just
That's
like,
right.
okay,
Yeah.
you realize that you got to be careful what you put in,
Yeah, I'm using this
on your
thing called
phone.
Gemini. Is that AI?
It's
Yeah, of course.
again, this is a brave new world that we're all in together.
Yeah.
And security needs to be a core competency for every organization. AI is going to play a role in making it easier and making it harder to stay secure. And so I'd encourage all to learn as much as you can, and to start figuring out how to take advantage, whether it's partnering with us, partnering with you, partnering with those who've done it before to help you along this journey, I think is a great way to get started.
Yeah, this question came in too. I'll rephrase it a little bit, but how do you persuade leadership of the urgency of moving forward with AI governance when there's no proof of the downside of AI? So inherent in that is there a site that someone can go to find out the risks associated with AI or some of the incidents that have already happened with AI?
Yeah, I mean, there definitely are incidents, and you can search the internet and find a couple of doozies. I think when it comes to the urgency, I'd frame it this way, right? Like, there is a reason to be optimistic and to move forward swiftly, and I think those in the security profession need to embrace that we need to move swiftly because the window is right now. But I do think it's it is innovate and keep security in mind or responsible AI in mind. I don't think it's an or, and it doesn't need to necessarily slow things down. I think a lot of this can be done in parallel. So there are definitely we've got a risk model, and I encourage all to think about it this way, is depending on what you're solving for, it has a different risk profile. So if you can define the use case, like if it's an internal proof of concept, it doesn't need to be all that secure. If it's going to be communicating with a patient or a doctor, very different risk profile in getting things wrong and what ramifications that could have. And everything in between there is a possibility. So I think it starts with what problem are we solving? And then what's the right level of risk acceptance and avoidance can we apply to that problem? What are the right guardrails? What are the right protections that need to be in place? But it starts with clearly defining what problem we're solving and then architecting a solution for it. I think it's very challenging if you just put a bot out there and give it a bunch of access to data and think that your users are just going to find ways to use it and that'll be a good solution. I think that's a recipe for confusion and potential risk, from a compliance point of view. Again, if appropriate precautions aren't taken.
Yeah, sage advice, no pun intended, sage advice.
Well done. Well done.
Yeah, let's end there. Ben, thanks so much for your time.
It was a pleasure.
On this topic. And obviously, we value our collaboration and partnership. And we'll continue to support the AWS stack for our customers and innovate there. And we're looking forward to all the new things you're bringing to the market as well. Thank you.
Well, Ed, I appreciate the opportunity. I appreciate what you and the team there are doing on behalf of your customers to make it easier to stay compliant and leverage these tools. I think the healthcare system needs all the help we can all provide it, and helping it be secure is paramount. So thanks for all you do and your team.
All right, and let's bring Saul back.
All right. That was fantastic. Thank you so much. What a great conversation. And for everybody joining us, thank you so much for joining us. there's a lot of exciting things happening here with things to be careful of. And so we'll make sure to share this recording with you here in the coming days via email. Really appreciate everybody tuning in and look forward to the next one. Thanks, everyone.